of where things go from here. What is your what is your theory of some of the different ways that the Democrats got it wrong?
I was joking that instead of calling themselves the Democrats, they should start calling themselves the selectors. Because if you'd actually had a real competitive primary, you're not in this mess. They still even had a chance to have a hurried primary when Joe dropped out in July, and instead it was just the elevation of Kamala. I made a list of recommendations for the Democratic Party in Politico a few days ago that I say in the piece they will totally ignore these. One of them is to make Dean Phillips the chair of the DNC as the only person who had the integrity to stake his career on what was right for the country. Another is apologize to Bernie Sanders for sandbagging him in 2016. In my opinion, if Bernie's the nominee, then Trump never becomes president in 2016. So there are a bunch of things that you'd hope that they would take from this, but you don't actually have any optimism that they will, because the dynamic I described before is that there are now various people jockeying to be the party's nominee in 28. And again, it's about them and their place in the party and not necessarily preventing this loss. It was a landslide loss that, as my friend Dean Phillips said, was both predictable and preventable.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, I think there's a few things I want to pick up on there from your comments. I want to come back to your assessment that Bernie would have won in 2016, because you and Bernie don't have exactly the same ideologies. I'm curious about your analysis there, which of course I agree with, but I want to hear your perspective on that. But the one thing I wanted to ask you about first is, it's also a real indictment of Gretchen Whitmer, Gavin Newsom, these people who, could have jumped into a Democratic primary and really forced the issue. And yeah, it would have been tough and people would have been mad at them and whatever. But if you've got the governor of California, the governor of Michigan, some actual heavy hitters in the Democratic primary, it makes it much more difficult to just effectively cancel the primary, which is what they truly did. Obviously, they had no debates. And on certain states, they just literally canceled the primary and blocked Marianne and Dean and Cenk and anyone else from getting on the ballot. So how much of an indictment do you see this as, the people who are supposed to be the big star players coming up in the Democratic Party and their own career ambition and cowardice when it came down to it?
It's not very presidential to just be like, oh, maybe I'll just wait
my turn
until I have the blessing of the powers that be. And certainly Gavin Newsom and J.B. Pritzker are well known to have had campaigns in waiting. But as someone who ran for president, guys, if you wait for the right time, there may never be a right time. You know what the right time is? The right time for the freaking country, not necessarily your professional prospects. Again, it's one reason why Dean Phillips has my eternal admiration, because he clearly did not have his professional, his political future in mind. And his career has been ended as a result politically, though you guys think that, he could easily rise like a phoenix, which he could, because everyone now knows that he did the right thing. But that's unusual in American politics. We have a system that rewards cowardice and conformity and careerism and will punish courage. And that's one reason we're in this mess.
Yeah, and Andrew, one of the things that you were originally, one of the ways a lot of people heard about you was from the Joe Rogan podcast. There's been a lot of Rogan discourse around this. I know you've said that that Kamala should have gone on Joe Rogan. But what do you think that the shunning of Rogan, not even just necessarily by the party, but even by Kamala Harris herself, what does that say about the Democratic loss that led to Donald Trump?
No, when she didn't go on Rogan, I thought to myself, either they have a really big lead in their private polling, or this is a massive mistake. And one of the reasons why, in my view, the Democrats lost this race is that there has been this attack of people that are outside of their orthodoxy, and certainly Joe Rogan has been, mercilessly attacked. I've taken, a couple of slings and arrows. Like, who knows? They might even have hit you guys just for fun. Pretty much anyone who's like outside of the machine. And it turns out that most of us are outside of the machine. But that doesn't mean that, to me, Joe Rogan would have been completely fair and inquisitive and open-minded if Kamala and Tim Walz had come on. It would have been a massive boost for their campaign. And the fact that they didn't come on, to me, again, speaks to the careerism and risk aversion. It's like you look at it and you think objectively, okay, if we're trying to win, you should do this, but let's not make any mistakes. Don't want anyone to look bad. That's a great way to lose.
Yeah, although, to be honest with you, the more devastating point is that they may have actually made the right decision, because I'm not sure that she does hold up well over the course of a 2-3 hour conversation. When she had her weakest moments was actually when she was being asked just to talk about herself, like, hey, who are you? What are your values? It was like, oh, I didn't study for this one. So I'm not sure they actually made the wrong choice.
That's why you have a primary.
Bingo. That's the real core of the problem.
So true.
But just to get back, lastly to your analysis that you think Bernie would have defeated Trump in 2016, the DNC shouldn't have moved heaven and earth to block him from ascending to the Democratic nomination. I've my analysis of why that could be the case, and of course we'll never know for sure. But I am curious your thought process that leads you to that analysis.
One of the interesting things about having been a candidate in this context, Crystal, is there are times when a person and a campaign meets the moment, and Bernie was the person of the moment in 2016. He just had a ton of popular energy. I donated to him. I heard him speak and I was like, oh my gosh, like this guy's spot on. Like I can't not donate. so I donated to Bernie's campaign in 2016. He just had the will of the people behind him, and standing against him was the Clinton machine. And by the way, you think about the 2016 primary, it's like, why was it just Bernie and Hillary? It was because the word went out among the Dems.
That's right.
If you run against Hillary,
we're
going to shiv you. It's a career ender. You run against Joe, it's a career ender. We're going to shiv you. So Bernie was the only person, again, with the courage and patriotism and principle, and said, hang it, you guys can't intimidate me out of this. I'm going to run. And he had the will of the people. And then if you'd had him become the Democratic nominee, in my opinion. But by the way, there are a lot of folks who migrated from Bernie to Trump over the last number of years.
Right.
Yes, quite a few.
In large part because the energy is like, look, you're not an establishment tool. I'm into it. By the way, like there were a bunch of Trumpers who supported me because everyone knows you would never send the magical Asian man from the future if you were like, of the machine. It's like pretty much if you're not of the machine, like we'll take a look at you if you're a rank and file working class voter in this country, and Bernie had that.
Yeah, I remember doing monologues at the time about how much crossover support that you had amongst Trump support. If I remember, it might have been like 40% at one point. So as somebody who actually was able to get some Trump support, and clearly that didn't work out so well for the Democrats this time, at a structural level, not just with Dean, with the DNC, the consultants and all of that, what do you think should happen? They should be clean house and we should elect new leaders? Is it a primary process, or is it even deeper? You've talked about third parties.
Oh, I think it's deeper. And if you look at the numbers, as the math guy, the Democrats will probably not have any chance to be competitive in the U.S. Senate in terms of holding the majority for the foreseeable future. Just there are more red states than blue states. If you look at each map, it's tough. So if you're someone who wants any kind of real competition and dynamism, and for our country to be able to solve some of these problems, you're going to need a different approach to politics. You had someone like Dan Osborne, who I hope you guys had on.
Oh, we did.
So Dan Osborne
Yeah.
put deep red Nebraska in play and ran 14 points ahead of Kamala in the state. Evan McMullin did something similar in Utah. The fact is, there are many, many races around the country where people will not vote for either the Democrat or the Republican. And so you need a different approach. And that's what the Forward Party is making happen by backing independents and reform-minded people in each party. But like this blue-red thing ends in acrimony, tears, problems not being solved, et cetera. And that's the math.
Well, I love the idea of you getting behind future like Dan Osborne style candidates, because even though he came up a little short, to put Nebraska in play.
That's right. He forced McConnell to spend millions.
That's right. He actually may have ended up saving Jackie Rosen, for example, because that forced Republicans to have to take that race seriously and come in with a bunch of cash, et cetera. So I think that's a really exciting and interesting model for the future. Andrew, just tell people, where they can follow your work and your analysis.
Sure. If you can just go to Andrew Yang on most social media platforms, or you can go to forwardparty.com and see what we're doing. We had 25 office holders win. We are the biggest third party in the country by resources, which I wish was saying more than it actually is. But hey, we passed the Greens, the Libertarians.
There you go.
And we actually do have some really estimable people coming our way because everyone's fed up. Like that.